Hi, so I'm joined today by a friend of mine who I met through Monmouth Cricket Club, Duncan Delreeve, whose company with his better half Jen is called Unshakable You. And what I wanted to do today, we did a chat recently with John Wood, who's my triathlon coach. And I think obviously physical training is really important when it comes to a challenge like this, but also there comes a point where I think it doesn't matter how much physical training you've done. It comes down to how mentally strong you are. And Duncan and Jen do a lot of work with people on that side of things. So really wanted to have a kind of delve a bit into that side of it today, and see if there's any tips I can pick up. And I'm sure Duncan's the man to do it. But Duncan, if you could just kind of introduce yourself and kind of what you do and what your background is, I think that'd be a pretty good place to start.
Okay, thank you, Gareth. Well, I'm Duncan Delreeve. I'm 52 years old, and I love helping people get out of physical and emotional pain. That's in a nutshell what I do. And I try not to go into too much depth of exactly what I do, because that could be very boring. But if I take you back to maybe where I started, give you more of a background picture, I believe I've always been very interested in human behavior, why people say and why people do what they do, from a very young age. You know, probably a young boy just watching parents interact, etc. So I've always had that passion and interest. And from a teenager, interest in, if you like, weight training, you know, to build a bigger body, you know, muscles and what have you, to attract girls, you know, same old similar story. And it was in 1999 that I became qualified as a fitness, if you like, instructor or professional. And I've been self-employed, having my own business in that, if you like, health and wellness and fitness business since 1999. And I started off as an instructor, then very quickly into a personal trainer. And then within a year or two, a personal trainer that kind of focused more on corrective exercise. So corrective exercise in terms of if someone comes to me with an injury. And back then I would have a range of clients as a personal trainer from, you know, had to lose weight, or women with knee pain or hip pain, men with back pain. And so I very quickly had to educate myself in how do I deal with these people who are coming to me saying, hey, Duncan, I want to lose weight. I want to run the Henley Half Marathon, but I've got a bad knee or I've got a bad back. And it'd be okay, whoa, okay. Where do we start? So that passion for, you know, for human behavior and finding out more how we all work really had a nice channel of if you like, the fitness and the well-being world. And I sought out people who I thought were the leaders in their fields. And hence that's why I became more of a corrective exercise specialist, and then, if you like, a holistic lifestyle coach. And all that basically means was looking at the body as a system of systems. So not just, say, the physical element of, you know, muscles, tendons, bones, but the emotional component, you know, the digestive system, the detoxification system, the hormonal system. So that if I wanted to help someone, I had to be aware of, if you like, all these other systems, because they are all interrelated. So that really spent, I spent, well, I've been doing it, what, for 22 years or something. So all that time, I've tried to educate myself further and further, and having to learn more with each different challenge that a client brought to me, to get to the stage now where I believe that, due to my experience and understanding of, you know, human body and the psyche, if you like, that anyone that comes to me now, I believe I can help them. Now, that's not me being big-headed, if you like, and saying I can fix them. That's not the case. But anyone, I can help them to some degree, because I believe all the experience, you know, helping someone if they want to train for a marathon. Okay, there may be something that they've missed, maybe something really simple in kind of my eyes, because I've dealt with it 20 years, but it's something as simple as, okay, helping them get better sleep so they can rest, recover more by just tweaking something in their diet. So coming back to what I said, the physical and, if you like, the emotional pain, it is all the experience I've had with helping people get out of pain. It could be something very simple, like a simple stretch, simple mobilization for a joint that alleviates a lot of muscle tension, creating a injury or a problem that you're not able to recover from. That would be the physical side, but also say the emotional side, the beliefs system that people have and the patterns they have that could just be recurring patterns that create emotional pain. Mm-hmm. And that just takes, I think, some time and some honesty to sit down and just ask some questions and dig a little bit deeper to find out, if you like, the true meaning or the true belief that someone has about something that may be affecting their lives. And again, because of our experience, again, Jenny as well, she is, I think she's brilliant at this. We just dig a little bit deeper and we help people question their own belief system. They don't really realize they had or have. And it can be like a light bulb moment. It's like, poof, literally a light bulb moment within 1 or 2 sessions. And that can be something that can really transform someone's life. And to be able to help people with that, to us is just, it's just amazing that we can just impart some of it, if you like, knowledge based on experience to help someone get out of pain, physically, emotionally. To me, it's just amazing, and it never ceases to, if you like, fuel my passion to help people, whether it's just a simple exercise or a stretch or a more in-depth coaching session.
So do you have techniques that you could use kind of in the middle of a ridiculous challenge like I'm going to undertake? That when the chips are down, how do you get through those really rough spots? I know there's things that I've used in the past and read various books, chimp paradox and things like that, which have been useful. And in the interview with John, I talked about the David Goggins book, Can't Hurt Me, which has got some interesting things in, which actually I'd noticed I'd actually used some of those techniques just because it just was something that got me through without having read the book. It was kind of remembering times when things have been tough in the past and using that. But is there any kind of go-to techniques you would recommend for when you're in the middle of the night and you've got another 12 hours to run up the same damn hill and you really don't feel like moving another step?
Yeah, I have, if I can start off with what I believe is rather, if you like, a big issue in this area of motivation or goals or, achievement. Jen and I both are on the same wavelength with it. We believe that you can have motivation, but that can involve a lot more pushing.
Yeah.
You can push someone or you can motivate them by kind of pushing them. But I believe a far more effective method and a far more natural is via inspiration. I think when someone is inspired to do something, it kind of happens naturally. And I wouldn't say effortlessly, because I think that would be an insult to you, Gareth. But we like to use the word flow. When you're inspired to do something, I believe that things flow and they kind of line up to help lead you or transport you or get you to where you want to go.
Yeah.
So in terms of techniques, whenever I'm working with anyone and they have a goal or it's something they want to achieve, I always look for that inspiration, why they are doing that very thing. And anything that I can bring them back into a state of inspiration, to me, is me doing my job.
Yeah.
Helping them keep that focus of why it is they are doing what they're doing. So they're constantly drawn towards that goal or towards the end line or finish or whatever, whatever you want to call it, via inspiration.
Yeah.
And break it down in slightly differently to, take away the word inspiration, to put it into a feeling. I always try and ask a client or whoever I'm working with about their feeling when they're inspired, or what it is that inspires them.
Yeah.
And how do they actually feel when they think about that event or feeling or or dress or car or whatever it is that inspires them, how are they feeling?
Mm-hmm.
And then I try to get them to focus on the feeling. And then in terms of techniques, in a nutshell, when times are hard, I'll teach them little techniques or thought patterns or questions to ask themselves to get them back up to that feeling when they're inspired. Then to get them back to the place where, okay, hell, I've got another 12 hours to go, but the feeling is good, the feeling is higher, so they're closer to being able to flow in that state. Or maybe a similar sports term would be like in the zone, to continue on their journey wherever they're going. Because obviously being in the zone, as you know, time passes quickly and it feels relatively effortless, as opposed to slogging against the wall, because maybe they are focusing on their beliefs based on how they feel. So if they believe, oh, this is hard work, oh God, this is hard work, oh God, my legs are aching, I'm never going to do this, etc., they're more likely to feel the hardship, the hard work. And then maybe, unless their mental state, as you alluded to earlier, is so strong, they may quit or fail. Failure is a relative term. But if they are still focused on that good feeling, that, if you like, their own belief, I can do this. I can do this. I've run a half triathlon, for God's sake. I've run marathon after marathon, for God's sake. I can do this. And if that is truly a belief, I can do this, then eventually you have that foundation, it's kind of rock solid foundation to build from. And so when it gets tough, there's still I can do this, because I did a 59 miler cross country, up and down. I did a half triathlon. I did the Ironman or etc. So you have that belief based upon experience that you call upon, as opposed to say, hey, if you were to drag me up to do half of that or whatever, I'd say, maybe I can do this, but I'm not sure, because I don't believe that I am marathon or endurance training material, because I've never really done it. Does that answer the question? Hopefully clearly, as clearly as it seemed in my own mind, but
it's interesting. I've never really thought of it as like a belief. I probably kind of use those thoughts before, and certainly the inspiration is there for this, because with the motivation for raising a lot of money for the charity, etc. And fundraising so far has been brilliant. We're up to nearly £1,900 already.
Brilliant.
Christmas Eve, with best part of about 2.5 months or so left to go. But I think that belief thing is good. I think a challenge like this kind of lends itself to kind of breaking it down into smaller chunks. So I know it's 37 reps, so whether I kind of break that down into 6 lots of 6, and then the last one will be easy because it's the last one anyway. And I'm hoping that quite a few of my family members, my sister, my 2 boys, and my niece are going to join me for that last rep up the mountain. Oh no, it's not really a mountain; it's going to feel like one by then. But maybe some said about inspiration. So I think we'll have some banners up and some flags and Prostate Cancer UK balloons along the way, which hopefully would just kind of help to reinforce that message of what the inspiration is behind the challenge. I don't know whether you think that would be.
Yeah, I think by the time you get to that stage, I think you'd mentioned that it's having the family around you, the loved ones. And I think probably when you get to that stage, if you like, your hard work is already done. And I think, based upon my own, dare I say, limited understanding, because I've never actually completed such an event or a marathon or anything, but from what I've learned from watching and people that I've trained, etc., is that the emotion of the event, because you have your loved ones there, I think that generates an even more of a wonderful feeling or a connection, because you're sharing some great hardship with your loved ones, and you see the loved ones there, or you hear them. And so you can feel their energy, and it just rekindles that, if you like, that drive, that flow state of, yes, it's still challenging or hard work, if you want to call it that, but it's like this invisible energy. And if I quickly tell you, sorry, a little bit of my own story. When we came back here, we joined a gym. I don't know if you know, there's Ludus Monmouth, and run by a guy who was a strongman competitor, and he had his own strongman event. And Jen was competing. She really wanted to compete in some form from fitness, and so she went into this. She'd relatively recently, I think, I can't remember exactly the time frame, but we'd rehabilitated her own pelvic floor because she had a cesarean first birth, etc., and the pelvic floor wasn't very strong. And so my point is, she was doing an event where it's kind of like an endurance, but not the same endurance as yours, Gav. It was basically carrying, it's what's called, I think, the fireman's walk. So two very heavy handled bits of kit with lots of weight on them at arm's length, and you're trying to hold them up and walk around this course. Now, the course wasn't very long at all. I wouldn't even dare to, I think it's maybe, was it 20 meters or so long? You had to do as many laps you could. And I think it was all down to time or distance. And we were in the car with, because I had the children. I can't remember how old my youngest son was at the time. But I had the windows open and we were shouting out the car, and I was shouting, "Come on, mummy." And so straight away, Jen knew we were there. And I think it was my daughter cried out, and Jen heard her, call. She couldn't see us, but she just heard it. And she said afterwards that, if you like, inspired or motivated her to just keep going through that element of pain or whatever. And she said it was significant because up to that point, she was almost ready to drop the weights, because it was getting tough, feeling as the grip couldn't hold on anymore. And it was just that one voice she heard of her daughter, like, woof. And, so when you get to that stage, the love from your family and friends, and remember, I think that is an invisible fuel that just helps you go further, because it literally lifts you. And I'm sure you've had that many times before, you have experiences of that, but that's priceless.
I think
absolutely priceless.
I think there is that element of in an endurance event where there's always going to be a bit in the middle. Usually I think it's kind of probably the kind of from about 70% to 90% of the race where you've not got far enough through it yet that the end is quite in sight. But you've got past the bit where you're feeling fresh, and I think that's kind of the hump part where you have to get over it. But the number of times I've got to, I remember doing Manchester Marathon. I've done it twice. The first time I did it, I managed to beat the sub 3 hour pacer, but his timing was off. So I finished the race in 3 hours and 1 second, and I was absolutely gutted. So spent a whole year chuntering to myself, and arrived at the following year's race in not as good shape, because I'd done a silly night race in the Forest of Dean, fallen over, cut my knees to shreds about 8 weeks beforehand, ended up in A&E having bits of dirt scraped out with scalpels. After a while, they put some local anaesthetic in, which was probably an idea I'd have had at the start. But that meant that that kind of really important bit where you're trying to build up to your peak in the training was missing. And I arrived on marathon day knowing I could do the distance, and knowing that my goal was to I just wanted to be 2 seconds quicker than last year, but also knowing that I'd missed that bit of training. And from 2 miles in, I knew that I wasn't running as well. I didn't have that bounce you sometimes get in your legs when you've worked up for a big event like that. And I knew that it was a bit of a struggle. At 15 miles, I carried a single caffeinated energy gel with me. That was that was going to be my final kick at about mile 18 to 20 to get me through that last bit, just give me a real boost so I was feeling fresh when the going gets really hard. And I ended up having that about 14 and a half, 15 miles in, because I was I was struggling at that point. And I knew it was a real throw of the dice at that point. It was the last roll. It was I'm going to do this now, and they may have some other caffeinated gels out on the course somewhere that I might be able to pick one up later. But if I don't do it, that's fine. But I was still ahead of the 3 hour pacer again. At mile 20 on the old Manchester course, you went out, you left the kind of urban areas, and you went out on this spine road where there was no support at all. It was a very slight incline, no support whatsoever. All of a sudden, you're very aware of the pounding of your feet on the pavement, because you can hear it all of a sudden. You can hear your breathing because there's no one cheering, there's no bands playing anymore. At mile 22, this guy appears on my shoulder with this massive rucksack with a flag on his back that says sub 3 hours. And I knew I'd started about 2 meters in front of him on the start line. So I knew that I was really up against that point. So I spent the next 4 miles basically racing this guy. And then I was absolutely out of it, thinking I'm never going to do this. Got to the final straight, which must have been about 400 or 500 meters long, and I went around the last corner and I sprinted with everything I had. And it was just the cheering of the crowd just managed to unlock this bit of extra energy that I had my body had saved back. But I kind of, well, I zapped that bit of energy, last kind of 100 yards, my legs turned to jelly. I did a proper Johnny Brownlee when he got all wobbly and his brother had to throw him over the finish line in that race. And all I could see as I was running down the line, my vision was closing in and going blurry on the outside. I could just see the word finish above the finish line. I went over the finish line, went to press the button to stop my watch, and I missed and fell over and landed on the floor. Got carted off by the medics. 3 of them had to pick me up. There's a brilliant video of the finish line with all these people coming over celebrating and me getting picked up looking like I've had about 25 pints of Guinness. Spent an hour in a medical tent not knowing whether I'd done it or not. And it was only when a friend of mine who we'd been staying with finally found where I was and came and told me that I'd done 2:59.59. And hit my goal to the second, that I knew I'd done it. But it's just that, what you're saying, that kind of emotional thing of being able to unlock some more energy and just being determined enough to really go for it. And just people I didn't know cheering me on, does enable you to kind of just get that last bit, empty the tank, basically.
Yeah, but don't you find that's amazing? I mean, I certainly do. You said your goal was to run it 2 seconds quicker.
Yeah.
And that eventually, from all of your struggles over however many, was it 3? Well, yes, under 3 hours, of course, stupid me. But for that long time period, and you did it exactly to the second that you said you wanted to. Now that, as we would say, Jen and I would say, is like the real power of intentional belief.
Okay.
It's what you, if you like, what you kind of created or manifested. And that may sound a little bit too far out there, but that is exactly what you stated, what you wanted to happen. And you created that outcome. 2 seconds of, out of the whole almost 3 hours, you hit it to the second. To me, that's fantastic. That shows, I believe, your mental strength, but your belief in what you set out to do, which is everything.
Yeah, I think I just grasped hold of that bit where how awful I'd felt. There's all these pictures at the end of, so I met with some of my running club mates the first time I did it, and there's all these people kind of congratulating me. So under 3 hours and 5 minutes at that point was good enough for a good for age time to get into the London Marathon. So I qualified for that. But I was so close. There's all these people kind of celebrating they'd just run a marathon and celebrating times and patting me on the back, and I was just miserable as hell. Because I was and sub 3 hours was very much a secondary goal. The London Marathon qualification was goal number 1. I wanted to get into that because that was an important race I wanted to run. But yeah, I managed to. I think as I was kind of in that last half mile, thinking, right, I'm going to have to do this, because otherwise I'm going to have to come back again next year and do it all over again, because I must hit that target. And I think that I just remembered that pain, probably emotional pain of not having done it from the year before. And that's probably what got me through, I think. But how I did it, I don't know. It was interesting, though, that after that, there was 2 groups of people. There's my mum, other people who aren't athletes, who were kind of saying to me, well, do you think you pushed yourself a bit hard there? That sounds a bit dangerous to me. But then all the athletes that I know are going, wow, that's amazing. I didn't know you could push. I'm obviously not pushing myself hard enough, because I've never had that happen before.
It's a fine balance, isn't it?
It is.
Fine balance, but I think, you use your inspiration, but also the motivation to push yourself. But it came down to, I think, your mental strength or your belief. I'm going to do this. Yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it by 2 seconds. And that was the unwavering. And so nothing really got in the way.
Yeah.
did it. Because let's say run like that, nothing got in the way. Your leg's not functioning properly, didn't really stop you. So there's that unwavering belief first and foremost, and that I'm going to do it based upon that unwavering. And I think that's the difference, dare I say, with guys like you, that when you set out to do something, you do it because you believe you can, as opposed to someone else who doesn't believe they can run a marathon, so they never try, or they don't believe that they can, I don't know, lose weight, or don't believe they can run a half marathon, or they don't try because they don't believe.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference. There are obviously at some point, whatever age it was with you, was like, well, I'll give this a try. I'll give this a try, see if I can do it. And you kind of did it once, and then that built the belief. Well, I did that, so I can do the next thing. Yeah. So all, to me, always comes down to belief. If you believe you will, in this context of extreme endurance.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. The trouble is, you do that. I think I'm on a quest to find out where my limits are. I haven't found them yet, but there may come a day. But I hopefully Everesting isn't it. But it's just then, if I just found myself thinking the other day, well, if I do that, what's the next obvious thing to do? It's not, well, I don't know. I have to come up with something there. But I mean, people go and run 100-mile ultras, don't they? Maybe that's the next thing. I don't know.
Oh yeah, okay.
But yeah, at some point I'll probably be all my joints will be so knackered that I'll be sat in a wheelchair somewhere and in a home, and someone will come up to me and say, "Do you think it was worthwhile doing all that?" And I'll say, "Well, absolutely it was. It gives me so much enjoyment doing these things." That, and my dad, he's got 2 metal hips, a metal finger joint, all as a result of playing a very good standard rugby, being a PE teacher. If you said to him at the start of his career, if you don't play rugby for Wasps or whatever, then you won't have 2 replaced hips by the time you're 50. Do you think he'd not have done it? Of course he'd have done it.
Yeah.
He'd do it every day of the week, because you need that something. It gives you something extra, I think, that day-to-day life can't. Maybe it kind of goes back to the thing there's a theory, isn't there, that maybe we do these things sometimes because we're not going around chasing woolly mammoths anymore. We need that bit of enjoyment and that adrenaline rush, I think, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah, I totally believe what you've just said there, knowing that some people who experience extreme sports, that there is that real element of danger. I believe they're, for whatever reason in their upbringing, they've had an element of threat or danger, and they can't replicate that in the day-to-day life. So they search for something. I knew a good friend of mine when I was working in this industry to begin with. She was, while I worked for her, she was a very sort of a good friend and helping me to develop my early career. She had a relationship with a guy that was special forces, and she would confide in me about their relationship because he would travel a lot. And I had to conclude almost with her trying to rationalize or think about why he's like it. And again, that comes back to the human nature that I was always passionate about, looking into and trying to understand. And I tried to say that someone like that, who's experienced what he's experienced, life or death situations regularly, it's not they're wired differently, but they've just experienced far different things than you and I could ever imagine. And that almost becomes the norm. So everyday life to them is just like sitting in a rocking chair, maybe. It's boring. Yeah. It's uneventful. It's like, to them, it's dying. It's slowly dying. So they seek something that create something similar, as you say, that sense of adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
Because they can't get anywhere. And I believe some of those guys, drink or take drugs or fall into depression because they can't get that same, if you like, fix or state, because they really felt alive. And in those moments when there's probably bullets, explosions flying around, and they come through it, it's probably to them the biggest high they can ever achieve, and they try and replicate that.
I guess back to what you're saying about being in a zone, isn't it? I think a lot of the research on flow states and things like that, the people who can get into a flow state the best are the extreme sports people, aren't they? And there's probably no more extreme sport than being in a war zone and having people trying to kill you. But then things, if you're jumping off the top of a building wearing a wingsuit, that if your brain doesn't snap into that state where every decision you make is correct and you've made it in plenty of time to make that turn or move your body in a certain way, then you're going to hit another building and that's all over. If we could harness that, so I mean, there's been times when I've just playing cricket, and I could think of a couple of bowling spells when I was younger when everything just seemed to flow and I knew exactly what I was going to do with the ball, where it was going to pitch, how it was going to swing, and what was going to happen without even thinking about it. And there's other times when you run up and you have no idea where the ball's going to go, even as you're in your delivery stride. Unfortunately for us mere mortals, that's more often than the former. But again, on a rugby field, I've had situations before when it's almost like it's happening in slow motion and you're watching yourself from the outside, and it's like you're almost playing a computer game and you know what button you're going to press to beat that defender at that certain time. And even though you're going absolutely full tilt, it feels like you've got so much time on your hands. I think it's a really interesting area. I read a couple of books on it, but it's I think it's a bit more difficult to get into that in a kind of long endurance type thing. But sometimes you can get into a bit of a trance state where you can kind of run and you kind of go, oh, hang on a minute, I'm at 15 miles already. I don't remember getting past 10. And you've just kind of shut all the background noise out. But there's probably more to get into that area than our free Zoom 40 minutes will allow us.
That's a great point, and it kind of reminds me to say jump in with something that's may seem to be obvious or basic, but it's breathing, Gareth. Breathing. I use breathing techniques or exercises to not just get someone in that state, or if we take it back to, if you like, the autonomic nervous system. You know, I'm sure you know this as a you got parasympathetic strain and the sympathetic strain. And the sympathetic is the fight or flight, parasympathetic rest, recover, repair, etc. Many of our clients, from executives, sportsmen, etc., if they are too much in the sympathetic state, they're in that fight or flight far more than they should be. Now, obviously, we need that to keep us going in certain events, but daily life. But if we're in that state too much, we're going to burn ourselves out, relatively speaking, to keep it real simple for, as you say, this short Zoom. So what I usually do with most clients, almost every client, is some form of breathing. Sometimes it's an obvious breathing technique. Hey, lay down on the floor, etc. But the aim is to improve their efficiency for breath. So whether that's stretching certain muscles, such as the diaphragm, to make breathing more efficient, just normally, and hence, you know, bring your fitness levels up by 5 to 10%, depending on who you are, etc. Or for you already probably quite up there, maybe 2 or 3%, which is still massive compared to. Anyway, so I digress. But so it'd be breathing. So in terms of if like say I was to work with you, I would say help you practice breathing and improve the function of every breathing muscle I can with you to make sure that they're at their optimum, that we can get them, so that even in the tough periods, if you are feeling as though, oh Christ, I've got X amount of time to go, that I can almost help you in the preparation, and you go through a process of like flipping a switch. And that may take a few moments to happen, but whereby you revert back to that slower breathing state, or focusing on something about your breath. So it helps to bring down the sympathetic state and bring you more to parasympathetic, or more of a balance in that stage, so that it then becomes a little bit easier. And something I found, I mean, you've played cricket with me enough, you probably see me, you know, as a batsman, I would probably be quite rash and a bit too gung-ho, and that's certainly been the case when I've played my cricket. And I had a realization not too long ago, actually, that when I was out in the, you know, running between the wickets, and I'm sorry if this is technical for our listeners, but I found that I would be breathing through my mouth. If I'd be running quick singles or twos or threes, I'd find I'd breathe through the mouth. And keep this really short, technically speaking, that made my breathing pattern invert, and I became what we'd call it like a chest breather, which isn't the most efficient way of breathing, that would actually send me sympathetic or in a more stressed state. And when I realized this, it was like a light bulb for me in the middle of a cricket game. Like, holy cow. So I took a few moments to just focus on my breath and begin to breathe through my belly, diaphragmatic breathing, to calm down that stress state or that sympathetic state, to bring me back or closer to parasympathetic.
Yeah.
And the relation to this is, the more parasympathetic you can get, the more zone-like or in the state you can be.
Yeah.
Now, I'd love to tell you I went on to score a century. No, that's not the case. But it was in that state playing cricket, there's that realization that, hey, I'm not breathing as efficiently as I could. And that made a complete difference. Mindset, physical ability, because I wasn't so jittery. You know, it like sometimes as a cricket fan, you watch Kevin Peterson, he used to go play and he'd run some crazy singles as soon as he'd get out in batting, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
And sometimes we think, oh, that's a bit crazy. And he used to drink a can of Red Bull beforehand. And that's because he was a bit jittery. So I digress. Sorry, I'm to the listeners, I digress slightly, but what I'm trying to say is just simple breathing, bringing you back to a more balanced state, can bring you closer to the zone where you still continue to kind of flow, or as you said, in the zone. And a side note, I'm hoping that you're in the zone when you're bowling will happen far more this coming season.
Oh, hopefully, yes. Yeah, hopefully I'll have some legs left when the season starts.
Yeah.
But I think that's something I've noticed myself. Well, I think the best season I had batting wise when I was playing up at Penalt was I realised I was again quite frenetic when I was batting. So I made a point of listening to some really chilled out music on the way to the ground before every game. I think it was Bob Marley was the weapon of choice, I think. So it's not, it doesn't get much more chilled out than that. And that was something I saw. There was a test series in the West Indies and Paul Collingwood was batting really well. And I noticed that in between overs, when they were putting music on, he was singing along to the Bob Marley songs they were playing. And he batted really well because he managed to switch off completely in between the balls being bowled in. And then then switch on again and then switch straight back off again when he didn't need it. And that worked quite well for me. But interesting, the breathing things. It's something we use. We see quite a lot of nervous patients at work. A lot of people nervous about having dental treatment. And we use some breathing techniques that I learned from a hypnotist just to kind of get heart rates down and things. And that works really well. So I think it's a similar thing, really.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But anyway, I think it's been really interesting chat, Duncan. So thanks very much for your time.
My pleasure.
We'll have to wrap it up here because otherwise Zoom are going to kick us out, I think. But that's been really, really great. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your insight on those things. Hopefully people watching will get some benefit and some interest from that as well. And I'll put a link to your website in the blurb at the bottom. So if anyone wants to give you a shout and talk about some stuff, then they'll be able to find you nice and easy. So thanks very much.
Thank you for inviting me, Gareth. I've enjoyed it.
My
Speak
pleasure.
again soon.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you.